the first time. For instance, there have been some things have gotten better at Cedar Glen. They've gotten better.
Yeah.
But there's still pockets of people that are having heating problems. You know what I mean? So technically speaking, if those pockets don't clear up, we could go back in and say, you know, we're really proud y'all got a lot of it fixed, but you still got these pockets. And if you happen to be in the pocket where you have poor heat, it doesn't matter that anybody else has heat. So would let us kind of push the envelope a little more. And the other thing I think is what's happening with Carl King. Hopefully, this is going to put landlords on notice. You know, we understand that it takes time to get parts and everything, okay? But at a certain point, and you've got to.
Yeah. Well, I've got three thoughts. Going right off of that, when you talk about Carl King, we're not talking about a duplex on Western here. We're talking about a 219 unit facility that has 12 boiler systems and 10 of them failed. That doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It's negligence, pure negligence on that part. Two things that I would point out reading this that I find interesting. Number one, the board that it creates, I would point out that the township or that the trustee and the board are not one unit. We're independent units. Independent. One unit cannot tell another, one elected official cannot tell another board what to do when it's within your authority. One thing that's kind of cool about this is it creates a unit. Right. And this is the only thing officially that would make us all one on, which I think is kind of neat. Because although we all work together as one unit, by law, we're not. Then the second thing I would point out is this doesn't say a successful applicant for assistance.
It's not. No, it does not. It's the way that the statute is couched is in terms of someone who seeks resources.
Well, and the clarity I provide for you on that, sorry, Ryan, to cut you off. The reason I bring that up is our property inspection program is part of becoming a successful applicant. If you come and apply for assistance, you might meet all eligibility requirements, but if the property inspection finds it to be substandard, you are no longer eligible. You failed. You are ineligible. Everybody in that building right now is ineligible for township assistance right now, technically speaking. So I would just point out that that's interesting that it doesn't say you have to be a successful applicant. You just came in here and filled out the application, and now this piece would come into play.
Well, I was gonna say that was one of my concerns, that this could get people to just stop asking for assistance because they could receive threats from landlords for getting that kind of attention, right? But if it doesn't matter if they take it or not, because I was assuming it was all based on the authority of us giving payments, right? Which is where we kind of looked at with Cedar Glen. But if it doesn't matter if they actually take it or not, then that kind of removes the ability for landlords to punish their tenants, or the incentive for them to punish their tenants for using this.
So there's a couple, probably 3 points to address that, and the point's well taken. First, as far as what's contemplated here, yes, it applies to applicants, but this would also apply in a circumstance where you have someone who has previously received assistance, and perhaps since receiving that assistance, they remain in the same housing condition or the same home, but the housing condition is deteriorated. And so as a follow-up request to, yes, they would be considered a recipient of assistance, but their circumstance has changed, and now they would, this would apply to them as well. The important point, I think, is on that issue of people seeking assistance. The stick here is still that the township would have to incur some cost, would have to incur an expenditure before it can recover against a landlord. The Home Rule Act is clear that the township can't exercise, and it's the only unit of government that has this limitation associated with it under Home Rule. The township can't exercise a power if another overlapping unit of government is also exercising that power, right? So
would that be, what do you call them in the city? Code enforcement?
Bingo, that's exactly right. So the concept here of creating this nominal entity of the Housing Quality Department, that's not to say that this is a code enforcement mechanism. This isn't a mechanism to enforce the unsafe building law. This isn't a mechanism to enforce nuisance claims. All of those have statutory prescriptions that provide for the authority to be exercised either by the county or a city. Doesn't include the township. So this doesn't provide you general
That
enforcement
was my
authority.
other question, yeah.
Yeah, but what it does do, this certainly expands on the authority under statute to say, we have an obligation to keep people safe. You, landlord, have put someone in a position who they're an applicant, and you're not keeping them safe, and we had to move them, and because we incurred cost to move them, we're coming after you to cover that cost.
Mhm.
So that scenario is we're using Carl King. Carl King applicant comes and applies. We say there's no heat in that building, so we're gonna put you, you're eligible otherwise. We're putting you up in a hotel. Now we go back and say, Carl King, you owe us the money for that.
So that was the thing. So it's not just the cost of assistance. If we do other things because it's unsafe, that creates the ability to recover those fees.
Admittedly, your authority to do something because something is unsafe is still pretty limited. I mean, this, like I said, this isn't a general enforcement authority. This is really something that arises from that relationship between a landlord, an applicant, and the township. That's where the
Right.
privity is. So, to the extent that something would be unsafe, the way that this resolution defines it, something would be unsafe. It's that lacks proper construction, lacks proper health or sanitation, and those arise from those. I think it's 7 or 8 points under statute that says a landlord has to provide a habitable space, and the heat has to work, and the hot water has to work, and the elevators have to work. Those all go to those health, safety, construction standards that the board, through this resolution, would say that if housing if it doesn't meet those qualifications, if it's otherwise a violation of that habitability statute, then it is per se substantially.
Then we have the ability to put them up somewhere else, which is where costs become incurred, which grants us the authority to pursue those costs.
Correct.
Interesting.
Correct.
The only other thing I guess I'd like is if you could talk to code enforcement, Jason, and then we work out with code enforcement kind of a mechanism, since they have something they can enforce. But I would really like to have a meeting between us and code enforcement and to see how we can work with them for, certain things.
We meet regularly with the neighborhood services team, so we can facilitate anything you want.
Okay.
We talk pretty regularly with
Well, if they could maybe meet, I know I'd like to meet with them to ask questions about, do you have to have someone complain? Or can another agency complain about the,
yeah, no, we can chat that through with them. So it's a common misconception that you can file a complaint, A, anonymously, or B, on someone else's behalf. That's what we tend to do.
right.
So yes, but yeah, but we can
See,
still,
I've always been told, when I tell people to call code enforcement because their grandchild is living in a horrible place,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Okay, they tell me code enforcement tells them, well, the person who lives there has to complain.
We've heard that too.
You can't complain on their
Then you
behalf.
file a complaint about code enforcement.
Well, and it's funny you say that because just in the last month, I've told them that we've heard that from residents, that's coming from somewhere that they say they've been told that from the office.
Yeah.
And Emily tells us all the time that that's not true.
Okay, well, I'd like to,
But why don't we set up a
yeah, if
meeting?
we could do that, I would
Okay.
appreciate it.
Cheryl and Ryan, to your points on that as well, there are, and just so the board is aware, there are some protections under statute for circumstances where a tenant makes an allegation that they live in a substandard housing arrangement, and they make that complaint to a government entity. There are some retaliation protections for tenants in that scenario, and those, now that may be something that the board would want to explore further. I mean, given that you're gonna have some applicants that come to you and say, things are bad here.
Yeah.
And how do you want to incorporate that into how the township considers that as part of the assistance application. But suffice to say, there is some, maybe limited, but there is some protection under statute for retaliatory acts.
Well, the other thing I'd like to see is definitions of what, and I can't say the word inhabitable is. You know what I mean? I'll give you an example. You know, when we did Cedar Glen last year, and two people came up to me who lived at Marmain Apartments. Okay. And their complaint was, there's urination in the hallways. People have gone to the bathroom, bowel movements in the hallways, and you know what I'm saying? And so does that as a sanitary thing qualify as?
Uninhabitable?
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see some more descriptions of what we know it heat is one.
Well, and also
We
some
know
of it-
water is one.
Some of it is in statute, but only defined by court cases, right?
That's part of it, yeah.
So that is part of the issue that I've said before. It would be good to have that spelled out somewhere, and I don't know if anywhere in the state does that.
So there is the habitability statute, under the Landlord Tenant Act does have those, 6 or 7 enumerated sections as far as what constitutes, good and safe housing. That's there. But I would posit to the board that under the township assistance statutes, the trustee has a wide degree of discretion here
Fair point.
to determine what's substandard and what isn't substandard. And part of that, I think, is that the old pornography test. You know it when you see it. And so I think if somebody,
Don't know if we need that in the minutes.
that's the Supreme Court opinion. That's,
Yeah.
I know.
I think it's just as important that it's just the Supreme Court.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
I
know
remember
where
it.
they see it.
That is a,
So yeah, that's
Appreciate it.
you have, there is some discretion there. So as far as, what can be exercised under
So
this type of.
we wanted, for example, to define in our assistance guidelines what constitutes heated versus non-heated, right? Because I remember, I think that was one that you.
Yeah, I looked up and found out there is the city has a definition,
So we probably
Okay,
should just
and
include
the
that.
state has a definition. And, but for other things, you know what I'm saying? It's not.
That's a project though, I think. Like that would require a lot more than just.
You get into some real, and I think that point's well taken, that what you're
Yeah.
looking at here is more of the framework.
Right.
Agreed.
And I think what you're describing, what you're getting at more is of the, how are you administering that? And I think
Yeah.
that can be done at a separate level.
Right,
mean,
and I
without the
agree.
framework, that
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
go
agree.
anywhere.
That we vote yes, for me, we vote yes on this. And then we kind of frame out things like what are we talking about?
What comes
temperature?
next? Yeah.
What are we talking about,
And the statute does provide that the township, whenever the township does an inspection of housing, it can use local municipal code and any HUD standards as far as evaluating.
Mhm.
It's part of the evaluation.
And that's what we do. We use those.
So that is the temperature
Okay.
concerns and then those
Right.
specific temperature ranges. That's already kind of contemplated in the rules that the
Mhm.
housing inspectors are using.
So, and then kind of, sorry, I guess one of my last questions on this is the way this is set up, it sounds like it would be immune to the possibility of, for example, the city trying to establish a similar department, which would take away our authority to do it. Because we'd be investigating costs related to what we do.
I think that's correct. I mean, I think one of the findings here, I forget if it's section 6 or 7, but it says that there isn't another overlapping unit that's performing this
Right.
type of power. And the reason I think that is because it really is the exercise of authority specific to the township's role in providing assistance. And that's a unique statutory animal that the city, the city may have some, assistance-like programs, but it's not bona fide township assistance in the way that the township provides it. And so that I think that's an important distinction there. So I don't imagine that an overlapping entity would be able to implement something quite similar. I mean,
Not
for
that
no
that
other
would be a
reason.
bad
Not
thing
that it would be a bad thing,
necessarily, but just
it
don't wanna
also-
waste time on.
Correct. Well, those
Yeah.
other entities, I mean, the city, for example, has a number of other enforcement mechanisms available to it that the
Mhm.
township doesn't.
Mhm.
So that it would make more sense for it to be exercised through those authorities. As opposed
To
to.
create a new one.
Correct. Correct.
Well, and I think, that well, all I know is people will call me and they've complained to code enforcement or something, right? And what code enforcement does is when they say, no, you can't live here, is they'll basically give them a list of places to try to get money, because they've already spent their money for that month.
Right.
And township trustees are one that they recommend. They, have some other churches they recommend and things like that. But the city doesn't spend any of its own money putting someone up.
Which it generally won't, because that's a role that is
For
Uh,
township trustees.
allocated to the township.
Townships.
Right.
Well,
It's a first step.
yeah,
It is. In all candor, is probably not the first time that something like this will come before you as a board.
Yeah.
Um, it-
Especially since we've drawn attention to it.
Yes, I think that's right. But it does, statute, as I indicated, I mean, one of the reasons that you see a lot of statutory citations in here is because, you're relying on an amalgam of authority. But there's no code section you can cite to that says we can do X.
mhm.
And this is helping to fill that gap, to give you some authority to go help people. And that's really, I think, your goal. And, so that's why this has come before you. So it's particularly salient with the Carl King issue. I think it's pertinent to the Carl King issue, but it's certainly not limited to the Carl King issue.
Well, I, for one, say we vote yes on this resolution. And then from there, we can kind of, what am I looking for? We can kind of figure out, the little, exactly what the temperature has to be. And some of that is already done by state and city and,
Right, I mean, the next step would be fleshing out what does this board look like, right?
Right.
Like, how is that set up? Like, what are some of the standards that we're like, that is all stuff for the next step.
right.
But I
Or we can
generally,
just use it when these big moments come up.
I think you still need, like, my concern would be legal challenges that could potentially overturn the whole thing. And strip the authority from townships, because that is something they might want to do. So I think the more that we do set up an infrastructure for it, the harder it is to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and then to that, so we adopt a resolution and then create the board, or you create the board as you are
The board is
adopting?
created with the resolution.
Right.
What they're meaning is, what does it look like from an administration
Right,
standpoint?
right.
Execution.
So,
I make a motion to pass resolution, 01/2026. That's our first resolution of the year.
Yeah.
and I second.
Wrote a real nice one.
All right.
We had last year.
All in favor? Ryan, aye.
Mohammed, I.
Cheryl,
See
aye.
any issues, so, yeah, good work.
Last year, first resolution of the year.
Old business.
All right. I don't think
We got
there's any-
papers for that.
is there for old business, is there a rescheduled court date?
Oh, it's Friday.
This
Right.
Friday?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can they
in
show up?
In Marshall County,
Mhm.
okay.
All right.
8:00?
I think it's 9, but we could call Jim and ask him.
Okay, well, what's 1 hour difference in the morning? And Cheryl
Yeah.
got up to 12. Just one thing, this isn't really old business. I just, again, think we need to be aware of that we might have people coming to us about childcare.
Yeah.
They had a list, but I didn't get the thing of the states that are not going,
To issue
To get
vouchers.
money.
Yeah.
okay, most of them are Democratic, but they talked about that they were other,
Indiana, they said last year, we're not gonna start issuing new vouchers till 2027.
Yep.
They've been out since 2024, so you're right.
1:30 on Friday.
Whoa, it's 1:30.
Oh,
Oh,
thank
my
you.
bad. Jeez. You're gonna go down there?
Huh?
Are you gonna go down there?
Yeah.
Wish I could.
I was even gonna get up to be there in time at 8 o'clock, which we all know Cheryl don't get up that early. I don't know if that time existed.
You gonna behave yourself?
Behave myself.
All right.
But no, all joking aside,
Well,
right?
hold on. Let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Motion to
Okay.
adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Uh,